Well, hello, everybody. Hello, Bettina. How are you today?
Hi, Eric. Hi, everyone. I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing really good. How was your week?
Good. Busy, busy, busy. I'm like working three, four, five different jobs, Um, one of them is my choir manager job, which is uh, 2 nights and a couple of hours during the daytime a week. And my sewing, which is taking off. I've had to create a project board over there so I can keep track of what I have to do. It's short right now, but I'm getting more and more people interested. And so that's going really well. So I've been busy sewing because I've got this big project that I'm working on that I'm 3/4 of the way through, I think. And my duties as a domestic engineer and what else? Whatever else comes along, which I'm totally happy with. I think you and I talked about that before. It's that whole the variety is quite challenging, and I quite enjoy that. I'm
Uh-huh.
finding that um, the only the only thing that's a little bit tough is time management and how to and how. But I think after a while that will just come naturally. But it's fun. It's interesting, and it's like, oh, what am I doing today? And my sewing projects are interesting too because it's something different all the time. So
hmm I've been reading a book this week, and I'm happy to hear you have like all these like balls in the air, and I know that for your personality that works best for you. And I'm reading a book right now by Ray Dalio, who's the head of Bridgewater hedge fund. He's become one of the most influential people kind of in the world in financial and economic and political circles and so on, and
mhm.
among being like a self-made multi-billionaire. And so he's writing out books based on his life, his work, his economic, and one other one, principles, management principles, I think it is. And he talks about going from having nothing, and then he built a really big business, and then he made a critical mistake. Uh, and kind of lost everything. Had to start all over again. Lost all of his employees. Started from zero again in the mid '80s, and then has built this thing into like the biggest hedge fund in the world. And he talks about how from being at the bottom to being at the top, being at the bottom, being at the top again. That he finds the happiest, most happy people are ones who find out who they are, and then they tailor their lives to that, rather than trying to find all this outwardly success and so on. And that may be a piece of the puzzle, especially if you're inclined that way. But saying that no matter how much you have, no matter how many opportunities money can buy, or prestige or fame can buy you, the happiest people he's ever come across, the people who find out who they are and then tailor their life to that. And I find that was one of the things that struck most in that book, especially coming from a multi-billionaire. You don't often hear people at the top saying those kind of things.
Yeah, I think Richard Branson is another one who's got
Right.
a really good model as far as that goes. But um, it is interesting, and I don't think it's uncommon for millionaires to have gone through those waves of having it all and having nothing and having.
Yeah.
I think I heard somewhere, and I don't take it as gospel, but I heard somewhere that Tony Robbins had done the same thing, had been through some ups and downs in his career. Um, and I think it is interesting, and I think it is a good opportunity to evolve and learn more about yourself. It's funny because Peter and I were talking about this the other day, how we both worked in office environments for years and years and years, and that using your brain a lot, in an office, when you work in any kind of office or that kind of a career, you use your brain a lot. And how we have sort of come to that place, both of us, where one, we don't want to have to show up under someone else's rules and guidelines, 9 to 5, blah, blah, blah. And where we feel most happy and fulfilled when we are using our hands and creating. And then at the end of it, there's something that you've created that you can look at it and say, look, this is, my hands made this. It's a very, I don't know. I find you're getting involved, mind, body, and soul, into the project, and it comes definitely from a passion, and I think that's really the important thing.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely true. With the creativity, it always feels amazing to be in a space of creativity where you have a large amount of control over that. What it is you create and what it is that you create, and that is of value to somebody else, so you can get monetary recompense. I think it's one of the things I know. It's a thing I admire about Peter's story about working for Lockheed Martin and then leaving many years ago, and then it's interesting on this show over the course of like the last couple of years, and you talked a lot about maybe about a year ago or so when you were implementing your JARS for budgeting and so on, and how dealing with a change, like not working 9 to 5 at a Fortune 500 company. Sometimes it can be more difficult to find that financial stability, but by finding creative solutions around that, and just knowing that I don't want to show up there every day 9 to 5, I don't want to go work in an office for whatever money they want to pay me. I'd rather make it on my own. That does require sometimes, with a little bit more instability in finances, to come up with other solutions. But once you work through that, and I think this show has been a great, as we've been doing it for like 5 years, shows a real way in which you and Peter have been balancing your life in a way that works, and in a way that's financially viable. And I think that's amazing. I mean, it's really like a case study as to how to, for anybody who's stuck in a 9 to 5, or anybody who's stuck in a job that they don't like, which isn't to say all of them, certainly. But I do know, friends and so on worry about what am I going to do? Am I going to do this for the next 25 years? And to have more of a freedom to choose what you do every day. I think it's beautiful to have watched the show and to converse with you over time to find and figure that out, because what I see a lot is that, as I said on last, I think it was last week's show or one before that, where, it's really expensive to be unhappy, because you look to go and purchase things and do things to make yourself happier, because you feel like you deserve it, because you're not happy doing what you're doing 9 hours a day for the most part. And then, if you end up getting yourself into consumer debt, how difficult it is to pull yourself out, because the system just kind of sucks you in. Well, if you stay for another 3 years, you'll get another week's vacation. If you stay for another 4 years, you'll get your, then collective bargaining will re-up and you'll get a 7% raise. And it's so hard to get out when you're spending more than you make. And that's kind of a trap that I see a lot of people go through, and breaking it as soon as you can leads to a life where you wake up in the morning and you're excited for a Tuesday. And I don't think enough people are excited for Tuesdays.
Yeah, absolutely. And here's the thing: the whole money thing. We went through that whole thing where we want it, we buy it, and it did get us into debt because we don't have that income that sort of provides for that type of lifestyle. I mean, if you have that income, then that's totally your choice as to being able to spend the money or whatever. We didn't really have that. I mean, we had the choice, but it meant going into quite a bit of debt. So developing our own budget and working from the JARS, I really found I was more mindful in my spending, and we seem to have more money for going out and doing things like entertainment than we ever had before, because we were being more mindful, and money for each individual thing goes into a different jar. And if you borrow from one and you don't pay it back, then you're going to be short on that for whatever it is, right? I mean, if you borrow from entertainment, I mean, I always make jokes around here, because if we need light bulbs or something, and there's no money in the miscellaneous jar, and I take it from the entertainment jar and I go, here's some money for light bulbs. I hope you enjoy them because they came from the entertainment jar. I make jokes like that, but and that kind of lightens the whole mood when it comes to, well, geez, we don't have the money for that. But it does make you more mindful of stuff, of the accumulation of stuff, and how important is it, and beyond the purchase of it, how happy does it make you? Then you've got to find a place to put it. And really, I'm one to talk because I have a lot of gadgets, but the things I buy are usually supporting my saving money in my groceries, or my baking that I do from scratch, and leading a healthy lifestyle. But I mean, when we buy stuff upon stuff upon stuff, just because it's like, ooh, yes, we turn our wants into needs because that justifies it. And then we're living in clutter because we have so much stuff, more clothes than we can ever wear, more stuff than we can ever use, things you have to dust around and keep clean all the time. And I mean, it becomes a burden. It really becomes a burden. And also, so does the debt that you might incur in the purchasing of the stuff, right? So you're sort of doubling your burden, and your happiness is where? You're not getting it from all of this. So I've just found we've been happier when we know exactly what we have to spend, when we keep track of what's going in and what's coming out. There's times when the business, like, I can't pay us because Peter just doesn't have enough work that week, or there's expenses like his van or something that needs to be fixed. And yet we still are able to make it through because of the way we prepare and the way we, spend that bit of time budgeting. You don't need a lot of money to be happy. I think if you are working at a job that you can't stand, that is dragging you down, why are you still there? Because if it's for the money, you could do something else that would pay less and still be able to live on that money. I mean, one of the things that surprised me was really how little money you need to live and live well. Mm-hmm. So I say, be passionate about what you do. When you're like Peter's passionate about doing renovations. He loves it, absolutely loves it. He comes home tired and sore and, whatever, but he loves doing it. And he's happy doing it. And he wouldn't want to go and get a job because he's happy doing what he does. And the thing is that he might say, I got nothing, when I finish this job next week, I've got nothing coming up. He no sooner gets, a few days within the end of that job, and people start calling him. And next thing you know, his schedule is filled up again because we don't worry about it. We really don't worry about it the way we used to. Well, me more than him, because I was taking care of all the money. But it is a burden lifted, really. And it's just a little bit of work to set it up to begin with. And then once you've set it up, I usually, if anything changes in our situation, I will update the budget. But usually I only do it, it's always hanging on the wall. That's why I looked over there. I usually maybe go over it once a year just to make sure everything's still, all the costs are still the same. Nothing's gone up or down or whatever. And it's freedom. It really is freedom. And we both do what we love. Even when I was coaching, and not that I'm not still coaching, if someone calls me and says, they want to come and see me, I'm absolutely open to that too. But when it was the only thing I was doing, we still were making ends meet. And I mean, it's a good life. You've been here for dinner. You know how well we eat. You know how lovely our house is. And, we're not suffering. We're not suffering for our passion. In fact, we're flourishing because of it. And I think that's really important. And I think
Yeah.
everybody should do something that they love, whether it is a nine to five office job or a multi-million-dollar hedge fund guy, or working at Home Depot, whatever. If that's what you love doing, then you should do it. And I don't see any reason why you can't.
Yeah, we often lose perspective on how rich we are, even being poor here in most places where you have internet. Being poor is not being poor on this world. You're actually extremely abundant, and the amount of opportunity. If you just have internet, the library that's in your phone is greater than any library at any time 40 years ago and back. Like the greatest library doesn't hold a candle to your flip phone these days. The amount of opportunity you have, and we often lose sight of that. We often feel trapped when we're not. And I know cutting back on expenses sounds, to some people who might be watching, it's like it sounds like it's going to hurt at first, and it might, and you have to reconcile that emotion. But on top of it freeing you up, when you say it's freedom, it really is freedom, because when you realize that you don't need uh, the expenses that you were used to, it frees up your entire life to do the things that you like to do. It's incredible. And I love the idea about the jars that you and Peter do, and you work together and you have this budget, and you want to talk about doing something that's great for your relationship. It's working together for a common goal, and both getting bought into something. That's incredible. That feels amazing, and it promotes tremendous good feelings in your relationship with your significant other. And it just feels better, when you go to a jar and take the cash out and then go spend it. For some reason, my dad harped on me when I was a kid. This is one thing he really taught me, was that, you save up to buy something, because it feels a lot better when you've saved up to buy it than it does to just, plop the credit card down. Yeah, you get the instant gratification and you think you can get it way earlier than you otherwise could have. But that's how you want it, is when you save up for it. And that was advice he told me maybe 100 times from the time I was 4 years old, and that was absolutely true, and it is absolutely true. It still holds today.
Yeah, I think working with cash is, you appreciate things more, because you're holding that money in your hand and you know exactly how much you have to spend, and you question whether, that pair of pants or pair of shoes that you're looking at is worth it. And are you willing to part with that money? There's something psychologically that happens when you're dealing in cash. And someone said it's because you're having to give something over, rather than just, tapping your credit card or debit card or whatever. You don't see as clearly what you're spending and what it means, as far as how hard you had to work. Like something Peter does is, like, he'll say, okay, that pair of shoes is $110. I have to work 2 hours to get that.
Yeah.
Right. So it really puts things into a better perspective, and you really do. That is what makes you more mindful, is that you really see what you're spending, as opposed to blindly, waving your card around. It made a huge difference for us, a huge difference.
Yeah. And very, very, very smart people understand this and have set up the system to be this way, whether, the economy picks up when things move cashless. it's part of the puzzle of why our economy has done so well. It puts a lot of people into consumer debt and gets people spending, which is a double-edged sword. But same thing in casinos. There's a reason why you don't bet with cash. You bet with chips. Once you change it to chips, it changes the psychological attachment to it, and it's so true. And so if this is a way that we're made, might as well use it to your benefit.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
I think it'd be harder for somebody to pull out a $20 bill and play a blackjack hand and then lose, and then pull out a $20 bill, and then win, and then give back that money when it's $40 in their hand than it is when it's just, a green chip or a red chip. Makes a huge difference.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're right.
Well, we've come up to our half hour already.
Oh.
Just a quick discussion on
Money.
on money, and it's also energy, though. I mean, money really is energy, and I like the way that Peter puts it, and I put that way all the time. I always try to change, rather than just calling it money, you link it to something, tangible, link it to something, an idea that you have. And spending $50, so you have to work 2 hours for that. But that's actually not even true. It's actually more than that, because you have life expenses, and if you're saving at the end of the month $1,000, that you're doing pretty good at saving $1,000, and that $50 is actually more than 2 hours. It's kind of like 1/20th of your month, so it's like a day and a half, actually, not just 2 hours.
Yeah, well, I mean, you're paying income tax and everything too.
Yeah,
So
you had to work a day and a half to save it.
Yeah. Relationship. Money is a relationship. Like, we all are in relationship with money. And I think the problem is we don't all have a good relationship with it.
Mm-hmm.
And some of that can come from, having watched how our parents dealt with their money issues, and how we pay for things and how we see money. It's like any relationship. If it's an unhealthy relationship, you are not going to be happy. You are going to suffer. And so building a good relationship with money is very, very important, I think.
Yeah. Well, how do you feel about finishing us off with a meditation to finish the show and send us into our week?
I always feel good about that.
Good.
All right. So let's close our eyes and take a deep breath. And as you breathe into that place in you that is totally connected to God, the universe, the loving presence that you are, your true self. Breathe into this place and know that you are already happy. You are already at peace. You are already feeling joy and love. And that it is not something you find in the future. It is right here and right now. Whether you have $1 or $1 million, that joy and happiness and peace and love are right there, accessible to you in any moment of any day. It is not something in the future. It is something right now. In this holy instant, you have it all. And the only difference between knowing that and not is shifting your perspective and making the choice to see it and believe it and be it. Stand in this loving presence that you are and know that all is well in this world of yours when you choose. And when you're ready, wiggle your fingers and your toes and bring yourself back to the world.
That was good. Thank you, Bettina. I like the idea of this holy instant. Neil Donald Walsh really connected a lot of language together. And I used to resist at that point. I used to resist, any call to God or spirituality, and this holy instance, because it's all available to you in this instant, no matter what you're feeling, no matter what you're going through. Any emotion, any feeling is available to you this instant. It's always available to you. And we often trick
Yeah.
ourselves into thinking it's somewhere off in the future, somewhere off around some other
Yeah.
circumstances.
Exactly. Yeah. Course in Miracles is all about God too. So, and I'm constantly explaining it's not God as you. It's not the God you think.
Yeah.
In
Not
the
the God in
Course.
church. Yeah.
It's not the biblical God. It's not the church's God. This is this is an unconditionally loving energy that is a part of all of us, and we have access to it all the time. There's no judgment. There is no punishment. It is pure unconditional love, and that's what God is. So it's hard, though, if you've been raised with any kind of religious background, to sort of let go of those ideas.
Yeah, a God who doesn't smite.
Yes, exactly.
What good stories can come from that?
Yes. Yeah.
Well, thank you everybody for watching this week. We'll see you all next.
Have a great week, everyone.